What is up, ladies, gentlemen, Lounis? It is the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. I'm JT, joined by Frank, Jake, and Lounis. The full crew here. Super Bowl is over. Eagles did lose. I predicted that they were going to win on the last pod. Lounis, the Eagles fan, down bad. But you're not tuning in to hear about, Super Bowl highlights. You're here for Dynasty Talk. And I'm just going to kick us right into the news and notes. We promised we would make this quick. We said we were going to be quick.
We set a time limit.
Yeah, 10 minutes. I have the clock running. We have 10 minutes to talk about the 3 coaching hires. Frank and I talked about, maybe we were all here when we talked about D'Amico Ryans and Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Since then, we've had 3 dominoes fall, sorry. First off, the Cardinals hired Jonathan Gannon, which I don't think anyone really saw Jonathan Gannon as a hire, like a potential head coach.
I was surprised he got hired after that defensive performance in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, not great. Eagles were slipping everywhere, so I don't know. But it's just another weird part in the Cardinals' whole scheme or whatever. Like, you have all these nice young receiving talents, you have the young franchise quarterback, and then you hire the defensive coach. I'd just be interested to see what his philosophy is and what they're going to do with Kyler going forward.
I'm interested to see who they hire as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I think that's obviously the only dynasty takeaway from this, and just if they hire a good offensive coordinator, I think everyone just forgets about it.
Yeah, so while you're saying that, I was actually pulling up and seeing who they were looking for to be the offensive coordinator.
I don't think they've announced it yet, which is going to be
they've requested 3 interviews. Petzing from the Browns, Drew Petzing from the Browns. He was the quarterback coach there. Wide receiver coach Drew Terrell from the Commanders, and New Orleans Saints running back coach Joel Thomas.
So it's going to be kind of an unknown.
That's what it's looking like.
Yeah.
Which with Kyler Murray, I don't know. I don't think that's the direction I'd want my franchise to be heading in.
I feel like they had a slam dunk with Bieniemy. That's who I would have probably. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. Maybe he just is not interviewing well, or
he's going to the Commanders, right?
That's why he's switching, because he's like, I've had a top offense for all these years, but people, I guess, are just thinking it's only Mahomes and Reed. So he's like, okay, I have to switch to a different OC job. It's not like he's getting a promotion. It's the same job, just on a different team, I guess, just to kind of prove himself, which sucks for him. But I agree with you. I thought Bieniemy was the easy hire.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just think that this is such a good fit. It's such a good fit if you bring Bieniemy in, you give him. Yeah. I mean, he's been able to play with a talented quarterback, and we saw Bieniemy was heavily involved in that whole I don't want to say reinventing Mahomes, but you remember that initial period of 2 years ago where he started the season off really struggling. Teams were kind of just backing off, not let him make these crazy plays, and then we saw him develop into okay, take what the defense gives me, not go for the home run. Bieniemy was a guy heavily developed in that. I think Kyler could really use that kind of thing going on there. I mean,
yeah,
I feel like most people would agree. Yo, Dad 30, we love you too, man. We love you too. He said, hey dudes, love the show, catch you on replay tomorrow. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Yep. Thanks for catching in or touching base with us. All right. Moving us along, though, because we got to get under this 10-minute limit here. Panthers hired Frank Reich. I don't even know who the Panthers quarterback's going to be.
I like this. It doesn't matter. I think Frank Reich got a bad deal in Indy. He gets a fresh start here in Carolina. The Panthers are obviously, I think they have the 9th pick in this draft. They're going to take a quarterback, and he's going to mold him to exactly what he wants to be here. I wouldn't be shocked if we see the Panthers trade up to make sure they get the guy they want. I think they've been in quarterback, purgatory ever since Cam Newton got hurt and was never himself again. So I think they're really all in on finding a guy. They paired him with a good offensive coach here, and I think it's a good move overall here for the Panthers.
Well, we'll have all offseason to debate it because, it's kind of just going to be the same thing. The draft's going to be one of the biggest pieces here. But I don't know. They're going to have a lot of competition to move up to get into that spot. I've seen the Colts, so where Frank Reich originally was, they're a big name. I've seen the Falcons, the Panthers, obviously, the Texans. I've seen the Bears potentially taking quarterback and trading Justin Fields. That's the talking heads.
Well,
that's what's going on this week.
I would guess if Fields gets traded, it would be to one of those other teams.
Can I just pose the question of whether or not Sam Darnold has a shot? Because we did see him start to play better towards the end of the year, especially with that running game.
As a Sam Darnold hater, he was actually looking probably the best he's been.
If they get boned in the draft.
I know, I get it, but I'm saying the most of, in my opinion, that's going to happen. They're going to draft a quarterback. I could see maybe if they don't want to start a rookie right away, maybe they start Sam Darnold for the first couple games, and then bring in the rookie. But in terms of just like a full year starter, no, I don't see it.
I think from an expected value and what the Panthers should do is, if the asking price for that first overall pick, the third overall pick, wherever you're trying to trade up into to get this quarterback, if that's too high, I think rather than taking a Will Levis or Anthony Richardson at 9, or going out and spending a ridiculous amount of money on like Derek Carr, Jimmy G, or we're about to get to Derek Carr in a second, actually, I think their better chance is just like, all right, we're going to ride with Sam Darnold this year, and we'll have better, we'll play ourselves in a better
what you going for? Next year. What,
Caleb Williams
nickname? Oh well, sure, Caleb Williams.
Yeah. That's the path
really
I would
quickly,
take.
just to, because like I do agree with you, JT, in that potentially just like, okay, see what we have in Sam Darnold, play safe, build the team this year, get guys that we like, right? Get a year of evaluating everyone, and then the next year strike. Don't really hate that plan. What about the other offensive pieces, though, really quickly on the Panthers? Do you think this Frank Reich hire, like maybe a guy like Tommy Tremble gets some more action? DJ Moore, do we think he can kind of finally get into those wide receiver one finishes that people have been predicting? Like any of those takes?
I'll keep advocating to buy DJ Moore until
I will always say buy DJ Moore here. So,
but do I predict it for next year? No. I mean, I don't see this offense really taking a leap forward just because Frank Reich's there. It's still kind of one of the bottom ones, but I don't really hate this offense. Like, I'm not saying don't take any Panthers players. Like, they are, the Jake White sell all Ravens.
I'm interested.
Just saying
I'm interested to see who the starting running back is going to be next season.
Yes,
Hubbard is still on the team. Deontay Foreman is a free agent. Maybe he goes somewhere else. Maybe he stays. But we saw in Indy, kind of when they had iffy quarterback play, how much they leaned on the running game. So I'm very interested to see how it plays out.
You want to know who would be a good fit there? Rashad Penny.
You gotta stop.
Drum up the beat.
I'm not even joking. I think that Rashad Penny,
for
what that team was doing last year, I think that Rashad Penny would be really solid in that offense. But whatever.
Yeah, for about 3 games.
Him and Foreman are probably going to get the same kind of contract, and just health-wise, I'd rather have Foreman.
Penny's better. Give me Penny. All right, but we've been slightly talking about the Colts with all this, but they're the other team that hired someone, and that's Shane Steichen from the Eagles.
Eagles good. We want Eagles.
That was a Frank comment before the pod. Yeah. What I found interesting was he said, we're going to throw the ball more. Like, this team didn't throw the ball enough. We're going to throw the ball more. They have Michael Pittman Jr., who I liked. I liked him a lot, actually, coming into last year. I thought he was underrated, even though he was ranked highly. That ended up not being true. He didn't exactly pan out as I would have hoped. He still had a decently solid season considering the circumstances. But this is another team that quarterback situation is very questionable.
We're going to draft one.
Jim Irsay is kind of hinting, an owner that loves to get himself involved. Jim Irsay is hinting that this team might be trading up to get one. I wouldn't be surprised if they made
He flat out said it.
Yeah. I wouldn't be. Didn't he say like that Bryce Young fellow looks pretty good or something? Yeah.
Yeah, he was the Alabama kid looks good. Like, and he flat out said I forgot the exact quote, but he pretty much said that they're going to draft one.
Dude, I mean, come on. If they got another veteran quarterback, how many times are you going to try that? Like,
so I was going to say the interesting thing with Shane Steichen is the first thing a lot of people said, what pick do the Colts have again? Does anyone remember off the top of their head? 4. One name I saw being brought up because he had just coached Jalen Hurts and calling plays for Jalen Hurts was Anthony Richardson. But 4 is kind of a little bit high. It'll be interesting to see. But the other concept I'll bring in here is before he got hired from the Eagles, Shane Steichen was working with rookie Justin Herbert. So it's kind of hard to get a read on what his QB type is. I do think they're going to draft one. My prediction ultimately is that I think they end up going Will Levis.
I don't hate that.
I think they're following the same. They're going down the same path if they go with Will Levis. I think
they are, but
path? What's the path?
It's hard to get a read on
quarterback play.
Yeah, so they should draft Richardson instead. I agree, JT.
No, they should go up and get Bryce Young.
Or just take CJ Stroud.
Just more so. I just wanted to kind of address because a lot of people said oh, he was just with Jalen Hurts. He's going to want a mobile. He was with Herbert before, and so it's tough to get a read on his type because kind of Will Levis is more towards the Herbert type, and then someone like Richardson kind of more. Richardson's almost kind of type-wise between arm and mobility between the two, but it's tough to get a read.
I think they're getting one of the top guys. I think they're getting Stroud or Young. They're moving up.
They're getting one of those two.
They have the number 1 pick right now.
I don't think either of those two are falling to 4.
Colts are moving up to 1.
Here's what I'm wondering: do teams value Justin Fields or Will Levis more? We've kind of now. We're done with the coaching talk, right? So I'm counting that as our 10 minutes with coaching. But do teams
Justin Fields or Will Levis? What?
Yeah. What do you think teams value? Who do you think they hire?
Here's part of the issue is that if you're a hard rebuilder, then Justin Fields, the whole contract scenario may play a part. I think everyone would agree, though, that pure talent-wise, you'd just rather have Justin Fields than what you've seen.
Well, that's what I'm wondering in terms of if the Colts came knocking on the Bears door and were like, hey, rather than pay for 101, we'll just give you 104 for Justin Fields. Who says no there? Are the Colts not doing that, or are the Bears not doing that?
Does Justin Fields get you 104?
That's what I'm wondering. So it sounds like you would rather have 104 than Justin Fields.
My opinion,
but you could work something out where you get a whole bunch of other stuff. You could make it work.
My opinion, it's tough because every team's going to evaluate guys differently. I wouldn't be surprised if there are certain teams that have Will Levis at QB2, or certain teams that might have him at QB4, behind the top 2, Richardson and 4th. He's definitely not going to be ahead of Stroud or Bryce. Yeah, I feel like that part's kind of obvious. And then from there, it's. I think I would take him over Will Levis, but I don't know if Fields gets you 104.
Here's the issue that you guys aren't factoring in that I think the Bears have not only already factored in, but this is the easy decision maker. I would not want to trade away Justin Fields because he has that locker room. That entire team believes in Justin Fields. You're going to trade him away for a quarterback that not only has to do what he's done, but now it's oh shit, we just traded away the dude that we all believed in, the team leader, for this guy. If he isn't that dude, that's a huge problem. And that could not only set their franchise back, but they're in a spot to really make some things happen. They got a shit ton of cap room. They got the number 1 overall pick that I think you can just get more for than Justin Fields. So I feel from their perspective, it doesn't make sense to trade Justin Fields. It makes sense to trade away the number 1 pick and just get a haul.
Yeah.
Yes, because they could turn that number 1 overall pick into a top 10 pick this year and probably 3 future first-round picks.
They can kind of do what the Eagles did. But they have a shit ton of cap space, so they can bring in a ton of defensive players, move back, and then start taking advantage of okay, we're going to put that contract for Justin Fields way out in the future, and then start sniping players that are really good, but that team can't afford them or doesn't want to pay them. Boom. We give a 5th for this guy. We give a 6 for this guy, a 4 for this guy. And that can all be fueled from this one number 1 pick. All of that can be fueled by that.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Speaking of free agency, shall we continue, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes.
We got one
did
more
have
topic, though.
We did have our big domino
Oh
to
shit!
fall. And the quarterback.
My
Well,
bad.
this does count towards free agency because rather than get traded to a team, Derek Carr said he will not be waiving his no trade clause for any NFL team. So the Raiders released him before his big contract bonus hit. So he's now the marquee free agent right now, I would say, in terms of the quarterback world. He's the one that most people, I think, would be going after. Other than potentially, well, he's not going to be a free agent, but other than Aaron Rodgers, I think this is the quarterback domino that will be one of the first to fall.
Lamar.
Is that domino?
That's like a house falling down.
Right?
That's a house falling down.
I think the biggest question with Derek Carr is, does him changing teams legitimately increase his value? Especially because, like, you kind of looked at the offense on paper for the Raiders last year, and it's hard to shit kind of hit the fan. They lost Renfro, they lost Waller, but Jacobs played well. You still had Devontae Adams. Like, does him going to any of these QB needy teams, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, now I think he's gonna Stafford and he's gonna pop off more?
I don't think it helps his value. I think it helps the players around him, their value more. Like, I'm more interested in the Saints, for example. I think that would be a good team for him to be on. Basically, any NFC South team, I would say him being on would boost the value of the current players, right? Because I mean, just look at the core, like Kyle Trask, Andy Dalton, or Jameis Winston, whoever the Saints quarterback is, Sam Darnold, and Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota. Derek Carr is significantly better than any of them. I would like him on any of those teams, and I think instantly all those players get better.
That's a good take. Yeah, that's a good take.
As for Derek Carr, he kind of just is who he is. He is who he's always been. Like, you're not gonna get quarterback one numbers from Derek Carr. You're just not. He doesn't run and he doesn't throw like a crazy amount of touchdowns to put himself in that quarterback one situation. I used to think he was a very overvalued. I'm trying to pull up him on Keep Trade Cut now to see where he is. I bet he's probably just fine at this point. Like, he's like
probably in that Kirk Cousins zone where it's like you're not going to get a first for him, but you're not going to sell him for the second.
He literally is like ranked right next to Kirk Cousins, and for that I think he's fine. Like, that's fine. I wouldn't say to like go out and buy like he's a must buy, but I also don't think he's like a you gotta get him off your team kind of guy. He's just a hold. He's a good guy to have on your team to just plug and play. You could spend your value elsewhere, is how I describe Kirk Cousins.
I don't know, dude. I might be selling Kirk. I might be selling Kirk Cousins right now as well, but more so, I think selling Derek Carr might actually be a pretty prudent move.
You think so?
I don't think you'll get very much. That's the problem. I think his value is where it is now, but I still don't think.
I have a question. If he signs a long-term deal with the Saints, does his value go up, down, or neutral?
No, completely neutral.
For me, it's neutral.
I think you would be hard pressed to get anything more than a mid-second round pick for Derek Carr.
Derek Carr's value.
I disagree with that because I think once he signs, there's going to be the because he's in the news. Like, I honestly think this is a phenomenon in fantasy football. If your dude is in the news and it's not just obviously negative, it's positive. It just is. Like, when he signs there, everyone's going to all of a sudden start thinking like, oh, him, Olave, they might bring someone in from the draft, right? It's classic off-season bullshit. And I honestly think that you can get that very early second, very late first. So at least I'd try to get that because I think it's worth selling for that at this point because he's a meddling quarterback to me. He's at best low-end QB1, and I'm not going to put my money on him to finish low-end QB1.
I'm with Frank. I think the late first might be a little ambitious, but I definitely think you can get an early second.
On Keep Trade Cut right now, he's valued at 202, and I still think it's because the team's picking at 202 or not.
No, I know. I'm
very good.
saying
you could go for a 2 seconds
news
move.
Of a signing. I think you could get up to that early second. I don't think you're getting a first for him, but I think you can get around 202.
He's actually had kind of a pretty impressive stable value on Keep Trade Cut. Like, he doesn't really have like any big dips or booms. Kind of just a good place to park value. I guess. What I will say though is, for the most part, it's been at an overvalued rate. Now he's kind of had a bit of a depressed value where I think it's just fine.
The problem for me with the Derek Carrs of the world these days is that I feel like I'd rather take what Derek Carr is worth and in a perfect world invest that into two questionable, but they are the starter kind of guys, right? So I could have picked up I mean, this is like the perfect scenario, but like I pick up a Jared Goff or a Daniel Jones and I pick up a Heineke. And then because Derek Carr was worth if not more than the combination of those two players, right? So I feel like because he's not that top end dude, and I just don't think he's going to be that top 10 finishing quarterback. I really don't believe that. So at that point, why am I going to invest these high end assets into you at this point in his career?
Joe saying Carr and Jimmy G are different sides of the same coin. I kind of agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They're all kind of there's a lot of them that fit into that realm. They're just there.
I mean, Derek Carr may be a little bit better, but not.
I was gonna say the one thing I'll give Carr to his advantage, he stays healthy.
Yeah, I don't put that
for now. I mean, listen, it's quarterbacks. All their injuries are fucking weird.
But Jimmy G, he just gets hurt all the time.
All right, but we just talked about our first free agency probably person that's going to be a big signing. But Lounis did bring up a good topic to talk about: free agency worry/buys. And I'll just kick it off here because I was talking Parker's in chat a decent amount. I don't see him in there right now, but he was asking like, "Oh, what kind of trades I'm doing," which we'll talk about later. And I was like, "Well, one thing I'm definitely not doing right now is I'm not buying essentially any running back because I think between free agency and the draft, I think." Nearly every running back has a chance of their spot getting snatched. They're them just getting replaced, or if not replaced, put into a committee. There's very few running backs that I'd say are safe. So it's kind of a blanket statement, but basically any running back I'd be worried about.
It's funny because I feel like I have a little bit of a list of running backs that I want to trade for that I was going to save for trades we're doing.
It's interesting with free agent. I think, is it safe to assume with all of us that Saquon, whether it's an extension or a franchise tag, will be back with the Giants?
Yes.
So we can get him out of the way.
I don't know if it's safe to assume, but regardless, I think he's fine. I'm not really concerned.
He's going to be.
He's going to be fine regardless. But yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah. I think what it gets interesting is specifically these three names being Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, and Miles Sanders. The one I'd be most worried about is Miles Sanders because
the other name I'd like to throw in this conversation is Kareem Hunt.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong.
I'd like to toss David Montgomery into there.
Sure, let's do it.
See, it's funny because Skol even mentioned it in the chat, right? Keep Fields, let Monty walk, get a wide receiver, right? I feel like the consensus once again is David Montgomery is not going to re-sign. I would hold my horses on that. I am not 100% sure that the Bears are that David Montgomery is like not, oh, I want to go back with the Bears, like, and take like just like a mutually beneficial deal for both parties, and he stays in Chicago. Like, I feel like it was almost the same scenario with Mike Williams a couple years ago, where everyone just assumed, oh, well, Mike Williams for like 2 years that he was going to be gone, and then boom, he gets an extension. I would hold my horses really quickly on David Montgomery of it being a lock.
Here are the running backs I feel safe about: Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even gonna say Kenneth Walker, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon. I'm not gonna count Bijan yet because he's not in the league. Established running backs: Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, ETN.
I'm not even comfortable.
You're fucked up for not counting Kenneth Walker.
And that's it.
Oh,
that's it.
I've got plenty of other running backs.
In terms of their situation not changing and their situation potentially getting worse.
Not counting Kenneth Walker is crazy there.
Well, I just think even if it's just Rashad Penny getting healthy, we're not going to see the same Kenneth Walker as
well. The problem in Seattle is I don't think we see a repeat of this Geno Smith. I just don't think that's likely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of instances outside of just free agency and stuff we could talk about Kenneth Walker, but like those five are the only five I feel like comfortable about. The others, there's big names up there like Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams.
What if his RB3?
Eckler. Yeah, Kenneth Walker's RB3.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard, people aren't really counting Tony Pollard's injury enough for me. I don't know how much that's going to affect him. Even the likes of like Derrick Henry, who's like just been the staple of Tennessee's offense, I'm not going to rule out them bringing someone in.
He's also like 30 now.
Yeah. There's so many running backs on this list that I'm like, nope. But there is someone down here, and he did just have his indictment come in. Alvin Kamara is running back 27. Aaron Jones is running back 28. I feel like those are cheap buys.
Those are the guys I would be trying to buy if I'm a contender.
I'm staying away from the Kamara situation, but that's an off the field issue.
Yeah, that's
fair.
I would wait for that suspension to happen and then buy on the suspension.
That's the correct answer.
Yeah,
because you wait, because I think that suspension based off probably what, like 5-6 games.
Oh, who knows, dude? It's
hard.
Dice roll with the league. You never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Aaron Jones, especially right now, a really good player to. I move my young, flashy things, get a bunch of stuff, and then move only part of that stuff to get Aaron Jones. That's a good move as a contender to do.
All right, but I mean, I essentially just covered most of the running backs in this.
I wanna go Jacoby Myers.
Is he a worry or is he a buy?
Well, I've seen on Twitter and on Reddit that people are very interested in scooping up Jacoby Myers, comping him to Christian Kirk. I am not that.
They're saying he's this year's Christian Kirk.
I don't think that he's that good. Jacoby Myers. I don't hate him.
Oh no, he's not. No,
as a Patriots fan, he's pretty good.
I think Kirk is a little bit better, but I don't hate the comparison.
I like Jacoby Myers, and I think he's gonna find a nice role on an NFL team. But like, I don't think he's gonna pop off and be a team's wide receiver one.
The problem with Jacoby Myers that I have is that there are both arguments for and against his production being on the Patriots, right? Oh, well, there was no other good receivers. Clearly, he was going to get all the targets. And then, oh, well, he's a great receiver. Their offense just fucking blows. And he wasn't able to, like, really be a wide receiver one. And, like, how do you value him? I've seen a late second valuation for the most part on Jacoby Myers. I have in this orphan league. I can't sell him for any second. I tried to get all the late. I wasn't going to settle for, like, 212. I wasn't going to do that.
He's ranked below Elijah Moore still on Keep Track Cut. He's ranked below Gabe Davis.
I don't hate it. I don't disagree that much.
I like him more than Gabe Davis. I still believe in Elijah Moore.
There's a lot of people on this list that I'm like, Jacoby Myers has shown me a decent amount more than these guys. Like,
yeah, but he doesn't have the upside that those guys have, and which is why he does. It's there.
The thing about Jacoby Myers is he commanded like a pretty high target share on New England. He just didn't score a lot of touchdowns. Like that was his big downfall, I guess. But like touchdowns, they're not a sticky stat. Like he might not be scoring touchdowns like last year. And Quintin Johnston, another guy I loop in there, they might not have been scoring touchdowns last year, but who's to say they don't score 6 this year? Like it's just kind of just a flip, and 6 touchdowns, that's another 36 points plus or whatever. That's a big jump in your points per game and everything. Like it takes you from a wide receiver 3 to a wide receiver 2. It's big numbers. I don't know.
So are you like excited about you? Okay, let's just take a late second, right? You're a contender. You have a contender late second. You have a good team, right? You're trying to make a championship run. Are you giving up that 24 late second or that 209 for Jacoby Myers?
No.
Is that at least a fair price?
It's a fair price. I would rather pivot current assets than picks. But if we're talking strictly in picks, I'd give up a late second for Jacoby Myers.
I mean, dude, free agency is going to be really wild for him if he ends up somewhere with a favorable landing spot. It's just, who fucking knows?
Can you imagine he ends up in Kansas City, doesn't resign TikTok boy, and they go and sign Jacoby Myers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. It's hard to buy into the Kansas City hype. I don't think they'll go out and get Jacoby Myers, who will probably be one of the top wide receiver free agents this year.
They're probably going to add a receiver. Unless you think
no way. If I have 211, I'm hammering running back as usual.
There's a decent, like this, you're talking about next year's draft class though, because here's the thing. Like I think if I grab Jacoby Myers with 211, I think he's just going to be worth more than that come 2024's draft class.
I agree with you.
So I might as well just pick him up
Jacoby
and
at
then
211
flip
is
him
great.
if I still want to.
I'm surprised you haven't been able to get any second for him. I would have guessed his value.
I do have some outstanding offers that I imagine they're waiting for free agency, but I might take those away. I've had the offers out for a week because of the fact that he could go up to a mid-second if he gets into a favorable landing spot. It's just I feel like his free agency is really hard to determine. He's a guy that's like he's not really like an outside dude, but he did play on the outside at times in New England, right? But like, I don't know how teams are going to value that. I feel like in free agency, we've seen a lot of these slot dudes get very undervalued in free agency, but teams are like willing to sometimes draft them with second round and third round picks in the draft. So it's like, I feel like it's just impossible to determine. Because like TikTok Boy was a guy that was a consensus really good receiver, and then all of a sudden it's like maybe he just wanted to ring chase in Kansas City. We don't really know, but I feel like the vibe was he was not getting much like big contract-esque interest.
It was a 1-year deal. I'm assuming if he had gotten a multi-year deal that he would have taken it. So it is interesting with him. I think Jacoby's in a little bit of a better spot than Juju was entering his free agency.
Really?
I think so.
That's interesting because the thing that I always liked about Juju was that he had that crazy season. Like he showed the upside. Like, dude, Jacoby Myers, I don't think has put up over 900 yards in a season.
Yeah, I want to look up.
I think 2021 he did.
I want to see what was Mr. TikTok's last season in Pittsburgh.
It was kind of injury riddled, and he did look very mid. I will say that he kind of looked like he was a different player than.
I'm with Frank on this one though. Like we've seen Juju have a big season, and I think that's something that NFL teams do take into account, that the guy has done it before. So like, to sit here and say Jacoby's in a better spot, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think Juju wanted to win, and he did. So like, I think you see Juju this offseason go and get that, contract worth, what he's actually worth. And
I know he had that crazy season, but then after he had in 2019, 12 games, 552 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2020, he played the entire season. He had 831 yards and 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, we were also he was playing with noodle.
The final season in Pittsburgh, it was only, to be fair, so it was only 5 games. But again, in 5 games, he had 129 yards in his final season in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Ben couldn't throw the ball fucking 10 yards. What are we talking about?
I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight you. Everyone's I'm not getting into it.
Johnson was doing fine.
What are we arguing right now, though? Or not arguing, but like what we...
Jacoby Myers, it's like...
Well, it's pretty much
Yeah, but why are we talking about Juju? It's...
I think he's a similar player in free agency to Jacoby Myers.
Similar.
I would rather have Jacoby Myers than Juju.
I agree.
I like both of them.
I'd rather give me Jacoby.
I think Juju does more for your football team.
Jacoby Myers was the only receiving option for the he carried the Patriots offense.
Give me
Him
Jacoby.
and Ramondre were the only two things that made this offense viable.
Well, hold on. Are we talking about right now, or are we talking about like when Juju was a free? Because I was kind of more talking about when Juju was a free agent than necessarily now. But I mean, we could honestly, it's
either way.
My opinion didn't really change on him much. If you play with Mahomes, then your competition is like who? MVS?
This is driving me fucking nuts. I've heard everyone says that they would rather have Jacoby Myers than like all these things. Like, oh yeah, I think he's like worth a late second. Like, oh yeah, I think I'd take him over Juju. And
I'm not in this league that you're talking about.
I can't fucking trade him. It's so annoying.
Am I in this league that you're talking about? Because I will literally go and trade a second right now.
No, but it's just infuriating.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at Jacoby Myers and the Patriots team stats. Like he had 96 targets last year on 14 games. Ramondre Stevenson had 88 on 17, but he was also the check down running back in the king of check down offenses. And then other than that, like you can have a receiver who had more than like Hunter Henry was next up with 59 targets. That's significantly less than Jacoby Myers. Like Jacoby Myers was a focal point of this offense. And I think wherever he goes,
wasn't playing with whatever. I'm not gonna. I just think
he was playing in a terrible.
You're underrating.
Well, yeah, that is what Joe.
Did I lag out or did Frank lag out?
Nah, Frank lagged out.
All right. Do we want to pretend like what Frank was saying?
Oh,
Sure.
As long
I mean,
as the
listen.
stream's still up. Can someone in the chat? Well, I mean, I have it pulled up on YouTube. Is our stream still live?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we're good.
Good. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
so
we
we
got
can keep
Frank
talking.
saying, yeah, Frank's in chat. All right. While Frank's not here, let's just slander Ben Roethlisberger for a minute, because like that dude, he was not good. Yeah.
He was bad. He was
Yeah.
really bad.
While we're at it, Troy Polamalu was he ever better than Ed Reed?
Hey, we can leave Paul Malu out of this.
Was he ever better than Ed Reed?
No, but here,
I don't know.
Let's keep it. Here's the thing: Ben Roethlisberger stunk in his last years. Like, I'm not gonna blame
Terrible.
Juju for that. Yeah,
He was so bad. He couldn't move. He couldn't throw. He couldn't do anything.
It's like having a refrigerator at quarterback.
More like a garbage disposal.
All right. Frank's saying, what about Dalton Schultz? I guess he wants us to talk about. Are we worried about Dalton Schultz? Sure.
No, Dalton Schultz. I'd rather him stay in Dallas, and that's the answer. If he goes anywhere else, I'm very mid on him.
Yeah,
Okay.
same.
And
What about Mike Gesicki?
I'm higher on Gesicki because I think
I'm
he's
out
a
on him.
more athletic player that kind of, if he goes to the right spot here, an offensive coordinator can get creative with Mike Gesicki.
can I bring up a name? And how you guys would treat him entering free
Sure.
agency? Jimmy G.
You know how I feel about Jimmy G. I don't want to.
No, I'm
No,
saying,
I don't want him.
if you have him
Yes.
what are you doing right now?
Waiting for him to go to another team and then
Yeah.
trading him, like
Waiting, and
hoping
then
it goes
trading
up
him.
even slightly, and then getting rid of him.
See, for me, like I'm not even sure. Like between the quarterbacks in this draft class, like I might like just on everyone's assuming he's going to be starting on a different team next year. I might like try to trade now.
Oh,
I
you
don't
don't
think
think he's
you'll-
going to be a starter for a team? I think like a team like the Jets or something, who I could totally see them missing out on
say the
Derek
Jets
Carr
get
and Aaron Rodgers.
say the Jets get Rodgers, the Saints get Derek Carr.
They're still the
the
entire
quarter-
NFC South.
The quarterbacks who we
Other than
think
the
are
Saints.
going to draft a QB. So like
That's
the
still
top-
leaves
Someone's
the
going to be
NFC
left out. Someone's going to be left out.
Yeah, because like where are the Bucks getting their quarterback? Because I don't think they're going to be able to get it from the draft,
That's fair.
and I don't think they're going to get unless
That's
Aaron. Like I don't
Yeah,
think
no, that's fair.
so. And if it's not the Bucks, the Falcons. I mean, they might trade up, but if the Falcons trade up, then the Colts might need someone. Like there's a lot of teams where I think, what's his face, Jimmy G could end up on.
Yes.
All right.
So you're
Fast
waiting
still
till the
tough.
signing, and then wait. Once he signs, though, you're not keeping him. You're moving him.
No.
Yes.
God no. Jimmy G's just like he's a worse Derek Carr. He's just
Yeah.
he's not getting me any points. He's I could pick up a Geno Smith last year, Taylor Heineke 2 years ago, and I'd get very similar production, if not better production, than just that random guy popping up. You sparked the Troy
one other
Polamalu
guy.
chat.
Yeah, I see that. One other guy that I want to bring up in free agency that actually signed today was Isaiah Hodgins. He re-signed with the Giants today. And I know I brought him up before, but I'm going to keep saying it. I think Isaiah Hodgins is just screaming by. You could pick him up for nearly nothing. And this guy truly showed out. He was a Dayball and Joe Shane special from Buffalo. They brought him back to New York. Like, this guy is clearly working his butt off, and he's earned his right a spot on the field. I know everyone's going to be worried about the Giants potentially, using their first round pick on a receiver, and I think that is fine. They had the worst receiver room in football last year for the longest time. Sterling Shepard just voided his contract. Kenny Golladay is basically a moving beanbag at this point, and they have nobody else. So Isaiah Hodgins will have a role on this team.
This Frank guy in chat looked like a buffoon for a second, but I think he's redeemed himself. First he said, "Give me Jimmy G for peanuts." No. And then he said, I think you got to give up a second for Hodgins.
No way.
Skull saying,
way
no
he's up
Hodgins
to.
for me. Give me a 3rd round pick. All right. So we already have a split here, but it's looking like
I
he's
think you
probably
can
on
get
that
him for
second
a
or 3rd round.
You should be able to get him for a 3rd.
If I can get him for a 3rd, I'm doing it everywhere.
Because
Any 3rd.
You don't think the Giants are going to bring in a receiver through the draft?
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters.
He's wide receiver 60. He's smack dab in the middle of DJ Chark and Curtis Samuel. I'd rather him than either of those guys.
Yeah. But
Brandon Cooks all the way down
Lounis,
to wide receiver 63.
Yeah, he's getting up there in age.
What were you saying,
But to Lounis's point, I don't think it matters if the Giants go out and do something, because I still think Isaiah Hodgins will be the receiver 2 on this team. I don't see them drafting somebody and bringing in a free agent. I see it being one or the other. So either way, I think he has a role on this team that will be a significant amount of snaps.
So
and if that's the
are going to be
case,
okay? Besides any draft or free agency additions, who are the receivers that are still under contract for? Is Sterling Shepard going to be there?
nope, he's
Wandale.
contract voided.
Right, he's free
You have
agent.
Wandale.
Oh, Wandale. Yeah, so if they bring someone in, it's going to be him and Wandale, the 1 and 2.
Wandale's going to be the slot.
I almost
and
forgot. I completely forgot about Wandale. Sure, he'll be the slot, but I'm talking number 2 in terms of like catches, yards, like actual production.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that's what people are going to assume, and that's
Wandale's
why I
good.
think
He's good. Yeah, he played well.
I think you wait. I think you wait till the Giants bring someone in. The Isaiah Hodgins price is gonna go down, and you just take him for a mid-3rd round pick, and you say thank you very much. That's
I
it.
do agree. I do agree. That's when you buy him. I guess more so what I was thinking of is now when you sell him. Right now.
No, I mean, I'm buying him, so I'm not selling him anywhere. If I have him, I'm holding him.
Frank says that his computer is cooked. So this might just be the original 3 shows prior to.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, but Skull saying stay away from Wandale coming off injury. I'm not going to shy away from Wandale.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I was like,
he's pretty cheap.
I was very low on Wandale because of his size and what was I gonna say? Just like watching him play, he was productive as a rookie. And like a passing offense that's like not all that, and
definitely not all that.
Like targets are open for anyone.
You guys are just slandering the Giants out here. You know Daniel Jones
I like
QB like
we're
13
talking good
right
about
now.
Wandale.
How did I diss the Giants with that? I said the targets
we just
are
said
open.
we liked
Who's your
Wandale
receiver?
Robinson, a
Kenny
Giants wide
Galladay?
receiver.
Slander.
How is that slander? That's not even. That's just the reality of the situation.
Slander is saying Troy Polamalu.
You want to hear about when I said like the targets open? The Giants signed Isaiah Hodgins off like a waiver cut, and he became like the number 1 receiver stud for you guys because there was no one there. That's the point I'm making about Wandale.
Small sample size on Wandale coming off injury. Yeah, sure. I would probably argue like, Christian Watson's probably not a buy due to small sample size, but Wandale's cheap. Wandale's not like you're not talking. Wandale was like when I was looking at Jacoby Myers. Yeah, he's right there. He's also below Gabe Davis. Like I'd instantly trade Gabe Davis for Wandale.
Oh, easy decision.
Elijah Moore, same thing. I'd trade Elijah Moore for Wandale.
Yes.
100%.
Ooh, Skull's bringing up to the Giants trade for T. Higgins. I'm not gonna say no, but I just don't think they. I mean, I think they should. I just don't think the Bengals end up trading him. I think they're gonna end up saying they're going to pay him for
real quick
now.
30 seconds. Who's the next big receiver to be available via trade?
I mean, I think it has to be T. Higgins, right?
T. Higgins. I put a sleeper. Debo.
Maybe DK Metcalf.
Oh, we have Frank.
Oh, look who's back.
DK is a good name to shout out.
Look who's back. DK is an interesting name. I would think Lockett before him, though. And Lockett can hold a lot of teams.
Nah, I think because teams will give up a lot more for DK. That's why.
Did you guys talk about Dalton Schultz already?
Yeah, we're just
he's a mid tight end. Yeah, what's up?
Sweet.
Mike Gesicki, kind of similar thing. I just am kind of out on Mike Gesicki.
I think Mike Gesicki for his price is potentially a really savvy buy.
Frank. Yep, I agree with that one.
Because I have to go to a team where he's like like certainly the second target. Because if he ends up being the third target on the team, like I'm just no.
Not necessarily, because I think that for the price he is right now, if you're trying to trade down, for example, right, you have a clear tier break or just a tier that you want to get into, whatever, right? You're just like, oh, I want to move into this pick. I'm just going to look to pick up value. If you're struggling to pick up the draft picks that you want, I think Mike Gesicki's potentially a dude that you can kind of throw into one of those trades on top of something else. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm just filling out my roster with guys that have decent draft capital and have done it before. Like, okay, sorry he couldn't produce over Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Like, yeah, I expect that, you know.
Yeah, but there are times where he couldn't produce over like Preston Williams.
Yes.
Like when Preston Williams was healthy, he wasn't beating out Preston Williams for targets.
Listen, I don't love Gesicki. Last year, I was selling every Gesicki to ever exist. But like 1 year removed, I'm not completely out on Gesicki, and especially for his price, dude. Like I feel like he's less than a third at this point. Like no one's giving up a third for Gesicki. Yeah, the owner's probably like,
You think you can get Gesicki for a fourth?
It's just in that zone where like no one's gonna trade him for a fourth. But who is giving up for a third for Gesicki right now?
I feel like a decent amount of people will give up a third for Gesicki.
I don't think so, Lounis.
I don't think anyone. I would never.
You don't think anyone's giving up a third?
Dude, I would gladly give up my third for Isaiah Hodgins because the dude is like at least playing. Like Gesicki is half the time
2,100 on Keep Trade Cut.
He's rated at 303.
The pick 303.
Man, 303 for Gesicki. Okay, maybe don't buy Gesicki.
Yeah. I mean, the players
I told you guys he's a third. You're not getting Gesicki for a fourth from any team.
I just thought he was in that zone where no one's giving up a 3 for him.
No, you'll find someone to give up a third for Gesicki.
Like above him
I'd
are
be
like
shocked if you couldn't get a third for Gesicki.
Players above him are Michael Thomas and CEH. They're like right above him. So that's an interesting little 1-2 there. And then right below him are Tyquan Thornton and Jalen Warren. It's just a very weird zone he's in. There's some polarizing players.
Michael Thomas is just worth more than his price on
yeah, that's what I would say as well. When do you guys doing rookie draft for 3rd and 20 right after NFL draft, slow draft?
Yeah, I was assuming that we would do it
typically
after the NFL draft. I mean, listen, I'm down to do it whenever. I don't really care, but I assume that most people would want to do it after the NFL draft.
I think it's interesting to do it before, but I think in terms of fairness of like if you were buying picks, you probably would have bought picks assuming that the draft would happen after the NFL draft. Like I feel like that's something you would have to like establish, like we're going to be doing this draft before the NFL draft.
Yeah, I agree.
Or something like that. Yeah, so I would assume after the NFL draft, but I think slow draft as well, right? That's what we typically do.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, it's normally done within a day though. All right, trades. We talking about trades we're doing, or any?
Yeah, I'm down to talk about trades we're doing because you were saying earlier. I'll kick it off. You were saying earlier that you really don't like a lot of the running backs in Dynasty right now. Yet, listen, I'm not necessarily hardcore buying any of these players, especially because their value will change person to person. But this list of running backs, for their cost and keep trade cut, I think are pretty darn good buys. And that includes Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams, and DeAndre Swift. I think that is a nice crop of proven good running backs that have all reached the point of we all kind of know they're good, but they're no longer the new guy on the block, so they're not worth the flashy, dashy prices that everyone else is worth.
The only one I would agree with you on there is J.K. Dobbins, and I was the DeAndre Swift guy, but
I'm in on Swift.
The Lions don't like Swift, so I don't know
Swift. I am a little bit concerned about, but I'm going to say, especially with what we saw from him at parts of the year, that it was just the injuries more so than.
I'm in on buying the dip on Swift as well.
The thing about Swift, and normally I'm not like an injury guy, right? But he was injured a decent amount in college. He was injured a decent amount in the NFL, and it's never like he's not like tearing his ACL. But it's always like, oh, he's got an ankle injury here, he's got some leg injury there. He's always banged up, and he's just never playing like at full. But when he is playing full, he's very good. So it kind of just it's a mixed bag with DeAndre Swift. And I mean, he's a super efficient runner. He was a super efficient runner this year. When compared to the previous year, he was not. Like, he was not very good between the tackles. But the team just isn't using him in between the tackles because they have Jamal Williams, who is just objectively better at running in between the tackles. So why would you use the worst player? So I don't know. At running back 11 and still below Najee Harris, yeah, I like Swift, but like, I'm not actively going out and spending. I would assume that's still a first round pick on DeAndre Swift.
Yeah,
right,
probably.
What he's rated as a first. Let me pull up another tab.
Swift, I gotcha.
I'm always going back and forth.
Swift is currently at 4,600, which is
It's like a late first,
I guess.
Mid-late.
It's like 108, I think. A little less
probably
than
like
108
or 109.
No, it's really like 110.
110, okay. Because this is
I think the
thing.
deal that's usually getting done is like a 108, 109.
If Sean Tucker gets the draft capital, I want Sean Tucker over Swift.
Dude, I don't think he is, man.
If he gets the draft capital, I want Sean Tucker over.
I feel like Sean Tucker's trending more and more towards being a Kenny Gainwell, and I hate it.
I don't know. I've been seeing him starting to get hype.
I like Sean Tucker, but I'm taking Swift over Tucker, man.
Yeah.
We'll see. But all right, Frank, let's get back to your original point.
I think one of the biggest buys, though, and I said this in the group, just like for one of my personal leagues, I want to trade Kenny Pickett for Najee Harris, if that's possible. And I actually think that now looking at it, because I was looking into selling Josh Jacobs, right?
I saw you texted that. I was really torn on it. I lean Najee Harris.
Okay, let's just look at this objectively, please, because I would have been not on my side as much unless I started looking at just the freaking numbers, right? Just like common sense. We were talking
and Frank, you're with me, right? You being your Najee side?
Yes. Draft capital. Okay. Who has better draft capital for their position? Clearly Najee Harris. First round pick running back, which is a very select group of young first round pick running backs these days, compared to Kenny Pickett's 20th overall in the draft, which, like, all things considered, bottom-esque percentile for the good dynasty quarterbacks these days.
Yeah.
Highly productive in both of these seasons. This season was rough for Najee Harris. It was definitely a trending down season. Still put up 220 fantasy points, and his rookie year put up over 300. Back-to-back seasons of over 50 targets, back-to-back seasons of over 1,000 yards. Second half of the season, Najee Harris, you can look at the numbers, much better. The Steelers' offense, once they finally got some continuity, right? We had a quarterback that could at least throw it to our team with some semblance. Najee Harris started to get going a little bit more. Started putting up the numbers that we kind of saw during his rookie year. I think all things considered, his price is just too low. I was never really super in on Najee Harris at any point in his career until now. Now his price, it's like $4,700 on Keep Trade Cut. I imagine that there are a lot of Najee Harris managers that kind of have a sour taste in their mouth, kind of like Josh Jacobs was last year, 2 years ago-ish, right? Because the rushing yards over expected numbers are really low. The yards per carry numbers are really low. You could argue that his numbers are kind of boosted by touchdowns a little bit, but I think all things considered, Najee Harris is just being undervalued.
I don't want Najee Harris.
I just want him.
Here's the thing. I don't really want Kenny Pickett either. But if you're asking me who do I think is going to have a higher value going into next year, I'm going to say Kenny Pickett. I don't think Najee Harris is that great.
You're going to disagree with me here? I just think that there's like such a good chance that Najee Harris finishes top 15 next year in fantasy football. I feel
but what's that do with his value? All right, he finishes top 15. He's currently ranked running back 10.
Yeah, but dude, investing in that, like, older. I don't care. That's a good season for his price tag. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. How many other running backs can you say with almost certainty under the age of like 26, right? That's not in. I don't know, because I feel like most of those dudes, it's either Derrick Henry or Aaron Jones, who are like super old for at least running backs,
But one
or
of
they're
those
in the
players-
top 10.
One of the players that you mentioned is ranked 5 spots behind him, J.K. Dobbins.
Okay, well, he's also on my list, bro.
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. But like, it just like Najee Harris is going to be entering into next season. He'll be a 26-year-old running back, and I think once you're at the age of 26, there's not people don't value much differently than a 27 or 28-year-old, which like Joe Mixon would be, like Nick Chubb would be. I just think like would be willing to bet his value goes down before it goes up. And if I'm paying for what I think could be a top 15 running back, I'd just rather go not in the direction of Najee Harris, because I don't think Najee Harris is capable of giving me that like true running back 1 or even like top 5 running back potential. Like I think he's just going to give you that. He's got the good usage like a Leonard Fournette, which is not even guaranteed. Like, I don't know if the Steelers go out and actually get any running back that's actually serviceable and not just a Jalen Warren, right? Like, maybe they get a player that can.
Bro, we don't have the luxury of picking running backs right now. We get too many holes on this roster.
Sure, but you never know. And like, there's just a lot of other running backs where I think you get at a lesser price and get.
Yeah, I'd honestly rather trade down from Najee into Dalvin Cook. Like, I'd much rather do that because I think they're very similar, where they're high floor running backs that just are gonna give you the touches and the touchdowns, and that's just enough to make them
also,
at best at worst a running back too. So like to do the trade down, you could probably pick up a good amount right now to go from Najee Harris to Dalvin Cook, just considering the age difference between the two. So like,
I don't know. I just think, dude,
Dalvin Cook, whether you want to admit it, just had the quietest like 1,500-yard 10 touchdown season of all time. So whether you want to admit it or not, Dalvin Cook is still putting up numbers.
Yeah, he is.
It's interesting to compare these two running backs. I want to see how similar their seasons were. Yeah, okay. And then Leonard Fournette was injured in his second season, but it's pretty similar to what I'm looking at Najee Harris. And then Leonard Fournette got cut by the Jags. So I'm not really buying into the whole Najee Harris, like, draft capital. He's got like as much invested in him as he's got more invested in him than Kenny Pickett. Because I mean, if you're not good, which like Najee Harris was like all right, definitely wasn't good. Teams are willing to move on from you because Leonard Fournette was like what, the 4th pick in that draft, and he got cut by the Jags after 3 years.
I think there's a little bit of context there, though, with the Jags kind of completely falling from grace and then eventually going into kind of a little bit of a 2 to 3 year rebuild. But yeah, Lenny was
right there,
great.
buddy.
I think that Najee, for his price tag right now, is a pretty phenomenal buy. I feel like, you mentioned a guy like Dalvin Cook. I just feel like you're investing in a Dalvin Cook when he's 25 years old. Yes, it's probably not if I'm trying to gain value play, but man, I just think that, and it's league dependent. If I can pick him up for that 110 price, 109 price, I think it might be worth it when it's all said and done. Like one of the guys that I could have picked might pop off, but man, as a contender, I think that's pretty solid. Or doing some sort of player swap, right? Like I'm trying to do Kenny Pickett in one of my leagues. I understand that he's a little bit lower and keep trade cut, but I think a lot of the quarterbacks are just slightly undervalued. Nonetheless, Josh Jacobs, simply because I have him in a league and I can't like get shit for him. So fact of the matter is, I feel like you can pick up a running back who just put up like 2K yards for a singular future first round pick. If you are a contender, that's probably just a good deal.
I don't think he's going to be. I mean, is he going back to the Raiders? Or is that a good landing spot? Like, I just don't see this as a good situation in any sense of the word. I think Jacobs benefited from an injured Renfro, an injured Waller, and a team that truly had nothing to do but turn around and hand the ball to him. Like, obviously, that it stands for something that he did well with those touches. I'm not saying anything about that, but going back to the Raiders is not a good situation, and typically running back switching teams is also not a good situation. So I'm just very concerned with Josh Jacobs, and also he's not a very young guy anymore. It's not like we're talking about a 23-year-old. We're talking about 26-year-old Jacobs now. It's not the same, or 25, I think, actually. But still, you're talking about a guy that's hitting that age where, yes, it's the running back prime for about 2 to 3 years, but it's also the time where they lose all their dynasty value. And if he shits the bed next year at a new situation, you're just completely crapped out of any value there.
I just think for a singular first round pick, I don't fucking care where he goes, because I think a lot of that switching teams, like, we're looking at guys that were either already washed or just not as good of prospects, not as good as players as Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs was a top 5 running back in the league last year. I mean, in virtually every metric, he was at the top.
Didn't say he wasn't. I'd be interested. So expensive right now. You're telling me I have to give 106 to get Jacobs right now?
I think that price is inflated. I don't think you have to give up that much. Now, once again, I'm a rebuilding team, so I really don't have much leverage when holding a guy like Jacobs. That might be it. But if he is on a team that is not a contender, I just think you can get a very favorable deal if you're trying to win a championship. You can give up a playoff level first round pick and get a potential top 5 running back. I'll take that.
I have 2 things. I'm more so just going to pose a question. I don't have the answers really. But I'd wonder how many one-hit wonders there are like that in terms of running backs. Like is what Josh Jacobs just did, like, is that indicative of more success, or is that like just could just be variance kind of thing, or a variable? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. The other question I pose is, between his rushes and targets, Jacobs had essentially 400 touches last year. I'm willing to bet that's unsustainable. That's not something that we typically see.
Yes, it was a benefactor from everyone being hurt and the Raiders having nothing to play for and turning around and handing them the ball every play.
Yeah, so I would like to know, like, how often does a player have such a significant increase in touches? Because he had 400 last year, like I just mentioned, compared to 230 the year prior, 300 before that. Like he's not really. He had a significant increase in touches last year.
But does this make him not worth a late first round pick in the future?
Well, that's why I don't know. That's why I want to know, like
you guys are saying, oh, well, he had 400 touches. Like, well, shit, I'd rather take the guy with 400 touches than 200 touches. To be honest with you,
that's why I want to know. Like, if you had 400 touches one year, like, is that going to tell me? Is that indicative that you will have a similar workload, barring injury? Let's just throw injury out the window. Barring injury, if you had 400 touches in this year, are you going to have a similar amount the following year, or is it just could be anything?
Well, I guess the one guy you could point to is Derrick Henry, because I feel like it's almost like outside of the injuries, everyone's been, oh, this is the cliff year, this is the cliff year, this is the cliff year, and it's like, okay, well, you've cried wolf 4 years in a row. Congratulations, one of these years
Derrick Henry is also.
But
I mean, if we're comparing just from a physical presence, right? Like Derrick Henry's.
Yeah, but dude, I think you guys are undervaluing Josh Jacobs' profile a little bit. Like Skull said, his career, he has been pretty good. Yes, the rushing yards over expected and the yards per carry and some of these other metrics are not amazing for Josh Jacobs. But to be honest, I don't give a fuck, because he gets targets and he gets fantasy points and he gets a lot of carries. And he's a first round pick. Compare his profile right now to a lot of the other young running backs, and I'm taking Josh Jacobs's.
Yeah, honestly, pointing to Derrick Henry, I mean, after his first year of big usage, he saw, like, he did get injured in 2021, but it was essentially 3 following years of large usage as well.
Maybe Zeke would be one, because, like, he's kind of had, but even though, like, okay, if you invested in Zeke at 25 for a late first, that's probably was a trade that was worth it as a contender, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it just matters where that first is, right? Because if you're telling me I could give up a late first for Josh Jacobs, don't hate it.
Jake, do you want to give a point?
Okay. If you're telling me late first for Josh Jacobs, like fine. That's fine. If you're telling me I gotta give up like 106, 107, 108, like Keep Trade Cut says, then I'm like, I'd rather just take the prospect. So it's all a matter of what your league is, I guess. Because Frank, you're saying one thing, Keep Trade Cut's telling
Actually,
another
maybe not. Zeke might not have been worth it. He would have put up. Oh, actually, I mean, 1,300 scrimmage yards, another 1,300 scrimmage yards, with 8 touchdowns, 12 touch. I don't know. It's close. It's debatable. And then last year Zeke, which like wasn't horrible, wasn't obviously good. So you get like what, 2 mid-level RB1 finishes, mid-low level RB1 finishes, and then an RB2 finish for a late first.
It's a good value.
That's probably pretty fair, all things considered.
Yeah. Yes. I'm just trying to pull up.
Because the argument is like, okay, the argument that most people go to is, okay, what's the hit rate of that late first round pick? But I'm more looking at it, okay, what other things could I have traded that late first for, right? It might have been just worth it more to trade for whatever receiver I could have gotten. So like a late first, does that get you Judy right now?
Yeah.
Like that same pick that I trade for Zeke at 25, probably. So maybe it's not worth. I don't know.
I don't really want Judy.
I don't know. Leave that for a different day.
Because like the other question is, can you get one of those top end vets? Like, what does Devontae Adams run you? He's probably a little bit more than Josh Jacobs or whatever this first round pick that you would have given for Zeke is.
Probably a little bit.
Yeah.
Wide receivers.
Because that is an interesting discussion, right? Whether it's even worth trading for a guy that you kind of know is going to depreciate versus like the points he gives you. Because a lot of the argument to me is like, okay, is he going to give you that really high level production that carries you?
I think it's worth it. Running backs are tough because I think you could do it better with wide receivers and tight ends that last a little longer if they play into 31, 32. Like
Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs are ranked like right next to each other. Josh Jacobs is actually technically ahead of Devontae Adams.
That's an interesting debate. That's a really interesting debate. Which one you would rather invest in? I feel like initially I would have thought Jacobs, but I might lean Devontae Adams just because maybe if I'm a contender, I might just take like the 2 seasons I feel like of guaranteed high level production.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe it's not worth trading for Jacobs. I'll cross him off my list. I think it's fair at the end of the day, but Javonte Williams, though, I do want to trade for. You were saying that you were unsure of his situation. I just believe in his profile too much.
What does Javonte run you today on today's market?
You have to probably give up that low end RB1 price.
He's ranked above Josh. It's like the same as Josh Jacobs. Him and Josh Jacobs.
I'd much rather trade for Javonte
you have
Williams.
You have to give the premium because he's young. Although I think it's worth the premium. Listen, it's obviously arguable, but the feeling I get is kind of like ETN that rookie year when he was hurt. It was like, oh, well, you can give up just that singular future first round pick for him, but like, was it worth coming off the injury? And I thought it was worth. I just didn't have the balls to do it. And I'm getting that same feeling with Javonte right now. I feel like he has the talent of a top end back in the league, but he's ranked as like a low end RB1.
There's a lot of similarities, but where I'd say the big difference is I think rather than the Jags seeing James Robinson and James Robinson not being as good, not being as efficient as he was and getting rid of him, I think the Broncos look at their running back room and say, we need to bring in someone else because Javonte has been hurt. Like he just got hurt. And then after Javonte, we got rid of Melvin Gordon. So we're going to use, I don't know, the ghost of Latavius Murray, Mike Boone, like who's our next guy? And if they bring in anyone that's like somewhat competent, like I'm not going to put beyond Sean Payton to run you out 2 running backs. And if Javonte Williams is like a split carry running back, at the price of running back, what is he, like 9 if Jacobs is 10? Oh no, Jacobs is 8, so Javonte's 7, running back 7. Yeah, I just don't want to pay that much. Especially considering I could get a running back from this free agency class, or not free agency, from this draft class, that I think would be a similar value to Javonte Williams. That would give me a similar output. Because if Josh Jacobs is that 106, 107, or at least that's what Keep Trade Cut says, then I could almost guarantee Javonte Williams is actually going to be worth that 106, if not higher.
Yeah, I just believe in the talent. Don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the lowest price
you
he's
just
been.
really like him. I kind of like him, but I don't love him. All right. Anyone else we're trying to trade for, or do we want to talk prospects?
Let's do prospects.
Okay, we can do prospects. I was gonna mention, I'm gonna mention it really quickly.
Okay.
I'm trading away. I guess reiterate a point I said earlier. I'm trading away the meddling quarterbacks. I do not want average quarterbacks anymore. I only want shits or studs. That's my quarterback strategy.
Okay.
You're either shit or you're a stud. And by shit, I mean you're at least playing, but you're viewed as shit.
So you're trading away Kirk Cousins, you're trading away Derek Carr, you're trading away.
And it's
Russ,
relative. It's more so value than like play, I guess. So like Tannehill, I guess you can consider him a shit. Like he's the type of dude that I would be scooping up right now. And to me, like Jimmy G is kind of in the shit tier because of the uncertainty. I feel like you could get him on a pretty favorable deal. But like people are saying in chat, and like you said, it's all the same. It's a Fugazi, Derek Carr, Jimmy G, Kirk Cousins. They're all the fucking same. I actually think Kirk Cousins might be a smidge better, but
Kirk Cousins is a smidge better.
Yeah.
Well, well,
Derek Carr, Jimmy G, fucking Andy Dalton. It's like I'm looking at the same guy.
Brock Purdy is quarterback 23 on Keep Trade Cut, and that is not true. I just don't believe anyone is buying Brock Purdy at quarterback 23 prices.
I saw a picture of him going at the turn, the 1-2 turn in a startup.
There's no way. It's such a joke if that's true. All right. What's funny about that too is like Trey Lance is still quarterback 14, so reconcile that one for me. Like, whatever. I don't know. Prospect talks. Well, speaking of Trey Lance, I've talked about my buys before, but Trey Lance, Sean Watson, Kyler Murray, Lamar. There's a bunch of quarterbacks I'd buy. Drake London, Chris Olave, kind of. Garrett Wilson, kind of. If you could get them price.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to get a Trevor. I want to get a share of Trevor Lawrence, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Trevor Lawrence, I would not call a buy. He's quarterback 6. Kind of.
No, I'm just saying I want in. If we're being honest, so.
All right, prospects. Who want to kick it off with? Well, all right.
Zay Flowers.
Today's receiver day, so we can kind of pick it anywhere. You want to start off with Zay Flowers? He's not the wide receiver 1 in the class. I don't think anyone has him as wide receiver 1 in the class. But all right,
I don't think anybody does, but I think he is going to be an absolute stud.
Oh, all right. You might be higher on him than me.
I love Zay Flowers. I can't explain it. I just think the guy gets open and he is electric in space. And you know who he reminds me of a lot of is like a young Antonio Brown. And I
have seen that comp before. And
I just would love to get as many opportunities to draft this man in rookie drafts as possible. I think he's going to end up going in the first round of the NFL draft, and I think that's going to just skyrocket his value. But as of right now, I would love to take him in every single, 202 pick I have or whatever it is. I'm snatching him every single time.
Where do you have him right now ranked in your receivers, and what's like the highest pick you would take him with if you were forced to?
The highest pick I would take him with is probably 107, I think, right now, just because I'd have the quarterbacks, Bijan, Jordan Addison.
So what, he's like your wide receiver 3 then? Around there?
No, he's my wide receiver 2 behind Jordan Addison.
Oh, sweet. So you have Jordan Addison at 1.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Zay Flowers is your wide receiver at 2?
Yeah.
What? What is
As
this
of now,
happening?
as of now, I watched him this week, and I absolutely fell in love with the guy. I can't explain it, man. He just does everything you
All
want
right,
from a wide receiver. So like,
You're su-
is he
you're
the big 6'3" wide receiver, 6'5" wide receiver? No, but he gets open and he makes plays with the ball in his hands, and I think that's something an NFL coach will be able to use.
I
Very
will say
simple.
the thing that to me is very attractive about Zay Flowers is that I just feel like he has a knack for making those difficult catches, and like you said, with the ball in his hands, he's pretty darn good. So he gives you a good element of versatility, in my opinion. The only thing that I'm not really sure I'm as sold as everyone else on his ability to get open, like some of these players that he's kind of being comped to. But then again, like who the fuck am I to say if he gets the first round draft capital? So
I thought I really liked Zay Flowers.
where do you have him, JJ?
Like wide receiver 5, maybe 6.
Yeah, I'm more in that boat. It's like I have
Yeah.
him in this like third tier for me in this draft, but I don't hate him.
Jake's really throwing me in for a loop here. Well, all right. Obvious knock against him for me is that he's a senior wide receiver. So it is what it is. But
JT, why don't you learn? We did this
Learn what?
last year. Why don't you learn? Chris Olave, if you get the capital,
okay, but
it's okay.
who's better than Chris Olave? Jake London, Garrett Wilson. Like there are better wide receivers who weren't seniors last year that are now valued higher and should be valued higher. Like there are.
But the difference is those guys were going 102, 103, 104.
Yeah, that's why.
Well, Chris Olave is going 107, 108, which is the value here. I'm saying is very worth it. That's all I'm saying.
If you took Chris Olave, those guys, you would have lost value. So I don't know. I think whatever. It's not going to help here. I think he's like good, but I'm not going to take him over those junior wide receivers coming out and Quintin Johnston, JSN, Addison, right? So you got those 3 ahead of him for me. And then we're going to talk about some of these other 2 guys, but I have a tough time ranking him with Josh Downs and Marvin Mims. With those 2 other, and even maybe Parker Washington, because I've started to heat up a decent amount on Parker Washington in the past few weeks. But I don't know. I'm just going to say, like,
It's funny.
wide receiver 5 or 6, I think he's fine.
The guy that I am now really high on that we talked about last week, I'm much higher on is Jalen Hyatt. And I think that he's sneaking in above Flowers for me right now. That's my issue. Right now I have Downs and Zay Flowers in a very similar tier where it's like I'd scoop them up at the very end of the first round. Ideally, like you said, very early second round. You have like a battle between them and those really good tight ends, potentially one of the quarterbacks, right? If a guy like Hendon Hooker gets better draft capital than we expect, maybe he flies up a little bit. Or those running, I just kind of want to say as we get into these receivers, like the more I look into this receiver class, I get a little bit more disappointed in like, oh, I think all these guys are studs. But man, I feel like there's just a good amount of like good receivers. Like there's just a lot of good receivers in the class. It's just a lot of depth.
Yeah, Skoll and Parker are talking about kind of like what I said about Hyatt last week. I don't like Hyatt at all. One trick pony. That's kind of how I feel.
I'm getting T. Higgins vibes, man.
I mentioned it last week. He was the Gabe Davis of college football for me.
How are you getting T. Higgins from Jalen Hyatt?
Because the vibe that people are giving him, man, because T. Higgins, he was just kind of disrespected. I think a lot of people thought like, oh, well, he's beside a bunch of other good receivers. He's on a really good offense with Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, and then he was just pushed into that early second, even though he got pretty freaking good draft capital. He had a very good profile, was extremely productive. I feel like that's kind of we're saying Jalen Hyatt is bad because we've seen teams miss on his type of player before, but we're not judging that based off of Jalen Hyatt. We're judging that off of people that aren't Jalen Hyatt. We're just grouping him to people that aren't Jalen Hyatt. I think that Jalen Hyatt was pretty fucking good. Dude, this Tennessee offense, first off, is awesome to watch. They'd have plays where it's just like, okay, we have one read. one read, get open. Like, go deep, get open. We are throwing you the ball. Like, and he was able to win.
Let's see.
He ran too many go routes for me, my liking.
He was a go route merchant.
Watson continues his wide receiver 1 play next year. As many wide receiver 1 finishes as Wilson in half a season. As many 100-yard games as Wilson and Olave, more than London. All in half the season. No.
Wait,
This isn't the
Christian
podcast
Watson?
you're going to find Christian Watson.
Listen, I'm a Christian Watson roster, but like, wow, I'm still trying to sell and I can't find a buyer. I can't buy a buyer.
He's better than I thought he would be, Christian Watson, but I do think we're basing off a small sample size and kind of there, for instance, nitpicking stats a little bit. I think Christian Watson, the receiver, first off, very much hinges on Aaron Rodgers, because I think if any other quarterback not named Aaron Rodgers is there, it's far downhill. But when you stack them up and just their overall receiver production, their overall receiving profile, when you stack them up to wide receiver that you mentioned, Chris Olave, Drake London, and Garrett Wilson, all three of those guys profiled to be career wide receiver 1s, much more so than a Christian Watson. So I wouldn't bet on him continuing that, if that makes sense. All right, I want to talk about another prospect. There's a lot. I'll let you guys pick.
Let's hit JSN. Actually, let's wait for Lounis to come back for JSN.
All right, we probably have time to talk about 2.
We can hit Addison. Yeah. So, Jake, you have Addison as your wide receiver 1.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. What's your theory behind that?
It's all over the place on wide receivers. Sorry.
I mean, I'm just saying I've been pretty good at it recently with Pickens and Watson and
listen, I respect the offensive mistakes. Like, listen, I'm interested.
They're decent.
I mean, I don't think it's a real out there take to say Jordan Addison is your receiver 1 in the class. I think that's almost consensus take at this point. Obviously, people like, JSN and Quintin Johnston as well, but I think Addison, Bolitnikoff winner as a sophomore, transfers to USC, plays with Caleb Williams, doesn't have as great a year, but I just think, he's shown that he is an alpha wide receiver. He is the guy on an offense. He is going to really make a team focus on him, and I just understand he's not the 6'3", 6'5" big wide receiver, but I don't think that's necessarily required to be the guy on an offense anymore. We've seen it before where, you can be a slightly smaller wide receiver and still put up big numbers. And I do think the Antonio Brown comp is a similar one for him, where he's also just open. He is a guy that is open all the time, and I would love to have him on any football team. Yes, he's only 5'10". Yes, he's not a super big frame, but tell me what he doesn't do right as a wide receiver. He has good hands, good route running, and it's just open, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what else can you possibly ask for?
Yeah, apparently some of the lack of production this year as well was due to the fact that he was playing through injury towards the end of the season that he wanted to play. So, I know one of the big knocks against Addison is that, okay, well, what happened to the production that we saw at Pittsburgh? Now you're on an offense, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, right? This should have been an offense where he just goes fucking nuclear, and he didn't. I don't know. The only thing that I have, because I like Addison as well, I don't necessarily like him as much as some of the top guys last year necessarily, but he's close. I'm just not sure I'm like firmly having him over Quintin Johnston. I feel like I kind of just want to pick up whoever's cheaper between the two.
I have him firmly as my wide receiver 3 behind Johnston and JSN. Yeah, firmly.
GT,
there,
we can't be further apart here on wide receivers, can we?
No, I don't think so. But I think that's typically the case. I do want to react to chat real quick though. A-Rod wasn't better than Goff or Cousins this year in any way. Got worse actually once Watson broke out. I would say, like, could that not be considered an indictment on Watson? Because what you're leaving out there conveniently is that's also when about Romeo Doubs got injured. And if A-Rod's dealing with
Romeo Dobbs didn't put up big numbers either, buddy.
No, but like when you have
more targets than you would think when he was playing.
Yeah, when you have, you're dealing with Alan Lazard as your starter, like your number one wide receiver, and Christian Watson's like your number two. It's not a great situation for Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. High on Quintin Johnston and low on Christian Watson. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That fits my mold 100%. I am very high on Quintin Johnston, low on. I wouldn't say I'm low on Christian Watson. I'm not going out and buying him when he's ranked above DJ Moore. He's ranked above Hollywood Brown. He's ranked above Deontay Johnston. There's just a lot of wide receivers.
DJ Moore? I need to trade Christian Watson as DJ Moore. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's most of the problem that we have with Watson is like clearly he has the upside to be a stud receiver. Like we saw it on like he would have these crazy big plays, but when push comes to shove, if you just kind of look in the past, more times than not, these receivers that, we're going to do the extrapolation from like, we're going to take this 7-game stretch he had and extrapolate it to a full season, that doesn't work out the way that you would think. It has before, right? That was one of the knocks against Waddle when he was coming out. It's like, okay, Waddle went crazy when he was a junior those first 4 games, and if you extrapolate it out, like he'd have the best season of all time. But everyone was like, well, you can't do that. It did work out in that case, but a lot of other cases it doesn't. We just don't want to be betting us. I guess Jake is on the site, even though you have Watson in our home league, which is like confusing me a little bit. But we kind of just don't want to.
He just kind of fell in my lap. I didn't really want him.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that none of us were particularly wowed by his draft profile and his production in college, which is kind of similar with these whole like big plays. And I don't know. I'm not as necessarily out on Rodgers as other people were. I think that offense was just kind of dysfunctional entirely. Not to put the blame on anyone, but dude, you watch those Packer games, it was guys running wrong routes all the time, completely missed pass pro. I think a guy like Robert Tonyan was expected to play a lot better, and he kind of played like shit. And then A.J. Dillon as well was another guy that they kind of expected to step up and was not really as reliable as you would have liked. So that's my take.
All right, so I think we have time for one more probably. So I think we either go in the direction of Quintin Johnston or JSN.
Let's do Tank Dell. Tank Dell, small guys, let's go.
No.
Well, I wanted to wait until like Lounis got back. I don't know what happened to him, but I've got JSN as my number 1 receiver. I'm not going to react to the slander that I've seen with JSN, where I've seen some pretty reputable draft people not having him go in the first round.
In the first, yeah.
I think he's going in the first. I'm not really concerned with that news. Dude, the thing is, like, yeah, he's not the most athletic player. It's actually a quick note. I think the 40 times this year for these receivers are going to be way more important than like ever. But I do think that JSN is
all these guys we talked about run, honestly, because I don't think Quintin Johnston's going to run a insane 40, but the other guys, Addison, Flowers, and now JSN, I'm very interested to see what they run.
Rookie wide receivers with 4+ top 10 fantasy finishes: Chase, Amon-Ra, Jefferson, AJ Brown, Michael Thomas, Julio, Odell, Deshaun Jackson, Larry Fitz, Moss, Watson. Is that the entire list? What about Claypool? Because I think Claypool would be in there as well, right? So that's just one off the top of my head. Like, I don't know if that's leaving player, like if you're just picking out the good ones, or if that's the entire list. But that is very interesting. I didn't know that.
When you have multiple 3-touchdown games, that's going to help.
Claypool did not have 4 top 10 weeks. That actually kind of surprised me. I feel like he had like exactly 4 weeks of poppage, and that's where all his points came from. I'm still like Skoll is. I'm just in on JSN. I think that like when you watch,
to be fair, he is my wide receiver 3 right now. So there you go.
Yeah, he's my 2. He's just behind Quintin Johnston, who I would have. We'll talk about Quintin Johnston, I think, in another episode. But like, I really like JSN, just not as much as a lot of people do. So it's weird. Like, I still think he's a very good wide receiver. I just don't have him as like a top 4 pick in rookie drafts.
I think that's a fair question, because I'm not sure I necessarily do either. I think right now I would, simply because I think that JSN's a safe pick. But I think a lot of that's due to, like, okay, what happens with Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft? What happens with some of these other quarterbacks in the draft, right? Where it's like draft capital just really determines those positions, what touches they get and how much they see the field. So while that's not set in stone, I probably would take JSN. Once the NFL draft happens, I'm not exactly so sure.
Do you guys find it interesting that Christian Watson, in his 4 top 10 games, those were all without Romeo Doubs, right? He had 21.1 fantasy points per game in like a standard league. And then in games with Romeo Doubs, which is another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In the 10 games that he played with Romeo Doubs, he averaged 4 points per game.
I mean, you're counting games where he like barely played, though. He didn't really become a player until he broke out. So what about the games after his breakout?
All right, but compare the 2 receivers. Who was drafted higher?
Yeah, obviously.
Who should have gone on the field first?
The problem
but he didn't. He was injured in training camp. Yeah, that's why he had a slow start. Yes.
The problem is that the argument for and against Watson is the same. It's one is, oh, well, he didn't get the ball a lot, and the other is, oh, well, he didn't get the ball a lot, but he did well when he didn't get the ball, so now he's going to get the ball more. And then the other is, oh, well, he didn't get the ball a lot, so he's not going to get the ball a lot in the future. And it all stems from the, like, it just kind of comes back to the same thing, like, which probably comes down to whether or not you liked him in the draft.
Is it the Gabe Davis paradigm? I think he's better than Gabe Davis.
I do too. Yeah, that is one thing I'll give you, is that if people are confident in Gabe Davis, like, I'm much more comfortable betting on Watson than Gabe Davis, like 90 times more comfortable.
Yeah, look, I'm not arguing Romeo Doubs is good. I'm just wondering, why is Romeo Doubs keeping Christian Watson from scoring a bunch of points? You know, it's kind of the same thing with Gabe Davis.
He's not.
The problem to me, though, isn't Watson. It's the price tag. It's I have to pay.
Yeah, that's what I said.
18.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. Yeah, he's good. He's just ranked above a lot. Yeah, I agree, Skull. Watson is better than Gabe Davis. And Gabe Davis was ranked as like a wide receiver 24 or something, but I was shouting from the mountaintops that was overrated for Gabe Davis. Christian Watson, I'm not going to yell and say that he's overrated, but I'm not going out and I'm buying Christian Watson. I'd rather wide receivers around Christian Watson.
All right, we want to fit in Quintin Johnston or no?
Yeah, sure. We could fit in Quintin Johnston, and then we'll knock out the big 3, and then also Zay Flowers, who managed to jump into Jake's top 2. I didn't play timestamp for JSN. Dang. All right, Quintin Johnston, I think he's going to test like an athletic freak at the combine.
I don't think that's a question. I think that's more of a statement at this point.
But where I'm going with that is, I think it puts him into top 10 draft capital.
No, it doesn't. No, who's taking him in the top 10?
If not top 10, top 15. He's a top 15 like a top 15 draft pick, I think. He's been mocked there. The Texans are consistently getting him at 12.
Yeah, I've seen mocks with experts where he's been there.
I think he could push into the top 10. If he's getting pushed into the top 10, the only wide receivers that I'd have ranked above him in recent classes are from last year, Drake London and Garrett Wilson. From the year prior, Jamar Chase.
Jalen Waddle.
What about Treylon?
No, I'd take Quintin Johnston over Treylon. If this is...
He's just a better Treylon.
Yeah. So Quintin Johnston over Treylon. And who am I missing? Oh, so the year prior to that, obviously, Justin Jefferson. CD. I'd take CD.
Yeah. And
I think that's it. So I have him pretty high as far as like a prospects considered in recent years. He's cracking the top 7, I think, out of 4 years. So I don't know. To me, the only player I'm definitely taking above him in rookie drafts is Bijan Robinson. Other than Bijan Robinson, I think
Bryce Young, CJ Stroud.
No, I mean, look, I would take them because they're just going to be valued more. So if I'm sitting at 102, I'm not just going to take Quintin Johnston, right? I'm either going to trade out at 102 and pick up the value, or I'm just going to take Bryce Young and then maneuver value that way. If I really want Quintin Johnston, which I might just take Bryce Young and hold him. But in terms of like who I think is like a really good, like who I think is going to have the impact on the NFL and everything, and who's going to be a long-term fantasy asset, dynasty asset, I think it's Quintin Johnston. He's just and the knocks against him, the drop passes or whatever, I don't care. Christian Watson was another one that people love to knock for drop passes. I would like the story of him in off season or training camp. Don't care. Jamar Chase, drop passes, don't care. Max Duggan was a Heisman candidate. How is he dropping passes? Because Max Duggan wasn't actually good. The team was just good, all right? Like Quintin Johnston, when he was on the field, I forget, it was the Kansas game, I think, he had like 20 targets or something ridiculous like that. I'll pull up the stats right now. Quintin Johnston dominated his team. He was super productive in college. He's an athletic freak. He's probably going to get super high draft capital. He's an early declare. Like all of the boxes are checking for Quintin Johnston. He's big. He's fast. He
Tinder girl JT is back at it. He can't accept the 5'10" Zay Flowers as a better prospect.
Tinder girl JT has been super into Jamar Chase and Quintin Johnston. Were the two of that.
Oh my God! No way! You've been into Jamar Chase.
Well, I was super into. We've had this discussion. We've had this discussion before. I was super into Jamar Chase compared to just the entire NFL landscape, not just.
Bro, we have had this discussion before. Everyone was into Jamar.
No, well, see, that was what the discussion was about. Is that everyone was into him, but everyone's consensus ranking was like wide receiver 16. It's like, okay, so you're not really that.
Yeah, I was taking him over like DeAndre Hopkins, who was ranked significantly higher at the time.
I mean, I think we did a startup draft right before Jamar Chase like rookie draft season, and I think we took him around. I think I took him around like wide receiver 6 or something like that. So we were all on the same page. I think at least on this point.
Back to Quintin Johnston. The only thing I don't like about Quintin Johnston, which kind of makes me like him at the same time, is that he's just really not a natural pass catcher yet. Because we have seen guys kind of develop into a natural pass catcher, right? If we're going to use the drops, for example.
He uses the problem is his drops aren't. He just tries to body catch the ball, which is a problem.
Okay, so we go back to like D-Hop as a prospect, right? D-Hop was always like, holy shit, this guy's got Butterfingers McGee. Like, he's a good receiver, but he can't hold on to the fucking ball. And then all of a sudden, poof, a year of development in the NFL, and this dude has like glue hands. The butter turned into glue. I feel like it's going to be more difficult for Quintin Johnston to like do the poof, I'm a natural pass catcher, but at the same time, like, what's more likely to happen? Your 5'10" random receiver all of a sudden becoming super fucking big, fast, and a yak monster, right? Or the super big, fucking fast, lanky, like prototypical yak monster becoming a natural pass catcher. I'm going to go with the latter.
Thank you.
I think that's a lot of the argument with that cluster of boxes that JT wants to check, is that basically that means you're a big athletic yak monster, and those guys can kind of just develop because they're big athletic yak monsters, right? Like if you're not good, there's probably something wrong.
Yeah, Parker's in chat saying you had Treylon as your wide receiver 1 last year. Yeah, Parker, I'm saying with what I know now about the current NFL players, which of these current NFL players I would take over Quintin Johnston? And it's a small list. It's only like 6. All right. Anything else you guys want to add?
Well, I'm just curious, like, I mean, I'm nowhere near as high as you are on Quintin Johnston, JT. I am really struggling to separate him and Addison. I feel like they're polar opposite type prospects, right? Jordan Addison's the smaller, like, very refined, right? He looks like an NFL player already. And then Quintin Johnston's the opposite. He's the, oh, I'm super raw. I am not the natural pass catcher. I need to improve my route running, this, that, and the other. it's weird because like I feel like I have Quintin Johnston ranked really high, but I don't like him as much as I like DK Metcalf. I don't value him as much as I valued the top receivers of last year. So it's just a weird feeling. It's like I have him in the same tier of Addison, who I feel like I like a lot, but I guess I don't, because looking back, like I think I would take Treylon and Garrett Wilson and Drake London over Addison.
I don't know, dude.
It's
I think
close.
Skull's 100% right in chat. Addison is a set it and forget it. As soon as you draft him, plug him into your lineup, you're gonna play him every week. That's it.
I didn't leave Devontae off my list, Parker. I would take Quintin Johnston over Devontae.
I don't know, dude. I'm really going
Is
back and
Addison
forth.
set it and forget it? Like, I think
Yes.
he's good. I think he's good, but I've said the same about like Rashad Bateman and stuff. Like, I really like these players, but
If Addison was eligible to come out last year, he would have been arguably the top wide receiver. Coming off,
he won the Biletnikoff and everything,
right?
But
coming out, he would have been.
There's more
right
to it than
Garrett
Biletnikoff.
Wilson and these. No, there is, but he would be right next to these guys you're talking about, and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Treylon, like all these guys that you're talking about. If Addison was eligible to come out, he was probably going to be picked before them. That's maybe not Garrett Wilson, but the other guys.
You're saying that, but like, where's he getting mocked right now? Like, he's getting mocked in like the 20s. He's getting mocked.
I just think there's been a difference in philosophy. Also, this year's a much better defensive class as well. So like, there's a lot of things going on. Yeah, but with
the way that we've seen receivers going and like the market and everything, and how free agency, we're talking about Jacoby Myers as one of the best free agents. Like, I would think you're going to take wide receivers high in this draft, assuming there's always a need and a want for wide receivers. So why we still have Addison going in the 20s or what?
I guess here's why what I think of Addison. I've kind of thought of it, right? Let's just take this late first round draft capital. If JSN gets late first round draft capital, I don't really care, because I just like the nuance that I saw from him at Ohio State. Like I think his routes are just fucking fluid. The dude has that it factor, right? I don't care if he goes in the late first. I just believe in him. Addison, on the other hand, that draft capital, if it's not, because he has like, there's been a lot of these NFL draft experts saying like, oh, well, Addison's clearly the wide receiver one of this class, yada, yada, yada. Well, if he ends up not being clearly the wide receiver one and maybe slides a little bit, just a smidge more than we're expecting, that might raise a couple question marks, even though like, I feel like I should love him because of that crazy sophomore season, the most predictive season for wide receivers. But then again, it's like Skull had mentioned, trade Quintin for DK Metcalf, you will be happy. Well, what if I just trade the pick that Addison is for a receiver in the league right now? I mean, I don't know what he gets you, but you can get a pretty fucking good receiver for whatever pick Addison. Like, let's just imagine Addison's 106. I mean, you can get almost any receiver outside of the top 9 receivers in Dynasty for 106.
About, yeah.
I'm looking right now. All right, so it's ranked around like a 5,000. Stephon Diggs, probably not.
No,
Drake
you're
London.
You're not gonna be happy with what you're gonna get. It's gonna be an aging Stephon Diggs, an aging Cooper Kupp, an aging Devontae Adams, a wild card in Jamison Williams, a wild card in Jerry Jeudy, often injured Deebo Samuel. Like, you're not gonna get a guy that I'm gonna be confident to plug and play every week, as I am in Jordan Addison. I'm just not.
You don't think you can get like a Waddle or a DK?
No, Waddle's at 6,000. It's a 1,000-point difference we're talking about here.
I would say Addison's probably closer to maybe not actually.
I'm not even sure.
Bijan and the two quarterbacks are like guaranteed above him. So the earliest he'd be is 104. But his most likely, I'd say, is either 105 or.
What about Devontae Smith? Is he now plunged high, like much higher now?
He's wide receiver 10. Yeah, he's at 5,500.
I'm just fucking torn on him.
I'd give the little bit extra to move Addison into Drake London. It's right there.
Addison is like the definition of on the like him and Quintin Johnston are on the brink of being into that like tier 2 level prospect for me that a guy like JSN is in. Not like that tier 1 like clear alpha insane. Oh, I gotta take him with the earliest pick I have type receiver.
Jamar Chase.
Like
Everyone knew it.
I just feel like
No, stop that. Not everyone.
Yeah,
everyone knew it.
We can go back. We can go back and pull.
Who
the tape
wouldn't have
everything.
had Jamar Chase as their wide receiver?
Yeah,
one
first
in
off,
that,
yeah,
in
Frank
the
had
class?
DeVonta Smith.
Who-
Second off, yeah, maybe most people had Jamar Chase as wide receiver 1, but they didn't have Jamar Chase over T. Higgins. They didn't have Jamar Chase over
What?
DK Metcalf. They didn't have Jamar Chase over.
No, he's right, dude. Me and JT looked into this because I got really fucking grumpy of everyone victory lapping on Twitter, and I looked at startup data, and Jamar Chase was like the consensus wide receiver 16 off the board, which is like, if you look at last year, like that's where all the other top receivers were going, right? Like if you were wide receiver 1 on your board, you were wide receiver 16. It's the same fucking thing right now. JSN, who's probably the consensus dynasty wide receiver 1, is going to be ranked around wide receiver 16, 15-ish, maybe even higher. So it's like, okay, well, cool. You may have had him as your wide receiver 1 in the rookie rankings, right? Like, but does that really matter? Like, A, where are you taking him in the rookie drafts? And B, where overall is more so what matters than like, oh, my positional ranking was amazing. I see this as a big problem with like all these people going back and like analyzing their rookie takes and whatnot. It's like, I really don't think picking the order of like the top guys is anything crazy. Like, okay, if you were like, oh, Amon-Ra I have as my wide receiver 2, that's a different story, right? If you're like clearly off consensus, but like
Zay Flowers as your wide receiver.
If you literally take the ADP of the rookie wide receivers, I'm pretty sure you beat the NFL draft if you like rank who picks who. So like, does that mean like I could just do that and I'm all of a sudden a fucking draft expert? No.
I trade Quintin Johnston for Drake London. Same. I've said that in the past. I would do that. I trade Quintin Johnston or London for Watson plus. This Watson prop again is going crazy in chat.
I don't get it. I don't understand the Watson hype here, and I have Watson in a few leagues.
I mean, to be fair, you could get like if he really thinks that Watson is the next bee's knees, right? You could get a serious packet, not like serious, but you could get a good amount on top of London, or on top of Watson for London, right? Like if you were looking to move down.
I don't know if you could get that much because I think Drake London's kind of
dude. Have you ever heard anyone say anything bad about Drake London that isn't something that's not Drake London, aka the quarterback?
He can score a lot of points. He's you could put you only need like a Noah Fant on top of Christian Watson to get Drake London.
Yeah, that's just not true.
You're gonna drive me crazy.
That's just not true.
I don't see regression. Wide receivers get better in year 2 as a rule. I feel like that's the ballsiest rule of all time.
This become a rule.
Yes, usually 2 points better.
Maybe, but like, what about the Laviscas? What about the Claypools? Like, I feel like dynasty value is the.
Ayuk. Although Ayuk returned, his sophomore season was not better than his rookie season.
Yeah, no.
I don't know if you guys like follow like stock market memes, but like there's a meme where like when you like start researching investing stuff, you reach a point where you just start going, everything's priced in. Like that to me is with the young receivers. It's like, well, everything's priced in. Like it doesn't matter if they get good or not. Like it's priced in.
I just think Drake London's profile is way more likely to give you a top 5 wide receiver than Christian Watson's profile.
Didn't hit the
700 yard. What's the 700 yard rule?
I don't know. I've never heard of this.
Oh, Skull, you're a big crypto guy. Stocks in a ton of real stocks in crypto. I love that.
I haven't talked about crypto in a while. I'm just.
It doesn't matter the top 10 finishes. Top 10 finishes are oftentimes outliers, as he had one game that had 3 receptions for 3 touchdowns. Like,
I don't know. I don't know though. Because I mean, I haven't looked into that enough to really like make a judgment on whether or not number of top 10 finishes at a certain point. Because like I can agree, like maybe 1 or 2, but to be fair, if you get a shit ton of top 10 finishes, like that might mean you're just good.
or you score a lot of touchdowns in the same game.
Yeah,
like,
true. Yeah, you're just a big play merchant. Like,
yeah, you're a big play merchant, exactly.
I don't know. I am watching on the sidelines of this Christian Watson debate, and I'm going to be fascinated to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch the comments as this progresses, but I think that's all we got, right, boys?
Yeah, I was just trying to pull up stats, but it's not worth it. It's gonna go in circles. All right. Season 3, episode 28.
Oh, I forgot to change the episode number. I'll change it now.
Boo. Boo.
No, it's set on my YouTube. It says season 3, episode 28.
Yeah, it says it in the title, but not on the screen.
Oh yeah, I see it on the top left. All right, whatever. But yeah, so that's the episode. We are through the Super Bowl, so now it's just going to be prospect debate and stuff like this. Christian Watson versus all of anyone.
Yeah.
Listen, if Christian Watson
him.
finishes top 10 next year, Shadrach Abaki, I give you full permission to clown us in this
Well, I
chat.
already
You
think-
can go off. Yeah, we'll give you the fucking platform.
To be fair, I think I'm already getting clowned due to Christian Watson.
You are.
Yeah,
it's honest, I think.
It's coming up in April. I think I'm going to get the clown treatment. So like that's almost guaranteed. So sure, but
Yeah, thanks, David Bell.
otherwise, yeah, we could.
Yeah,
also
you can
get- we could get
explain
more.
that. I bet you this guy will get a kick out of it.
I'll get a
Explain it,
pardon if I
all right,
hold.
yeah, I thought David Bell would be worth more and keep trade cut at the start of last year. When the draft happened, I thought David Bell would be worth more than Christian Watson. That is obviously not the case. So I made a bet with Lounis. I'm gonna get the clown treatment. I get the clown face put on. Is it on my face? Is it on my name? I don't know how
I
it
think
works.
it's just beside your name.
All right, that's fine.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, it's just the clown emoji. So yeah, you can watch, enjoy as JT will have to have that clown face next to his name
David
due
Bell,
to your.
the slug.
Yeah, look, David Bell. I should have known when he essentially had
Oh.
4th round draft capital as David Bell.
Dude, it's not over. It's not over. He can.
Oh, it's over. It's
no,
over.
it's
We have 2
not.
months. Christian Watson would have to get like suspended in debt. He'd have to gamble like Calvin Ridley for me to have a shot. And even then, I don't know.
Dude, if it's not
David
over
Bell's still
for
not
Isaiah
gonna-
Hodgins, I held to Isaiah Hodgins every year until this year. I dropped.
Yeah, but the
I
problem
dropped
is
him this year.
the deadline's like April 30th or something like that. Like I have 2 months of no football for somehow David Bell to pass Christian Watson. Like Christian Watson has to like pull an Aaron Hernandez or something. I don't know.
I was just
how
talking
it's-
about like if you drafted him in your leagues, like
Oh
just
no, yeah, no. That sure. I'd still probably be trying to move on from David Bell if there's any other believers, but for me, I'm done. I'm toast. I'm the clown.
All right. On that note,
yeah, this is a long one. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Skull, Parker, it was good seeing all you guys. Dad 30, Joe A. Bear, really
Sparky.
appreciate it. I listen. I'm sorry if I'm just like absolutely butchering this name, but Shadrach. Is that it? Is that it? Shadrach. I hope I'm not butchering that. Good to see you as well. Appreciate it. We'll see you on Tuesday. Peace out. Love you guys.